So I got to pick the topic, and the good thing for the topic for today is that unofficially Jenkins 2.0 has been released today. The marketing release is on Tuesday, so don't tweet anything yet, even though Costco already has tweeted about it. So just a quick show of hands. How many of you have started up your own Jenkins instance? Okay, how many of you did configure the security there? Okay, how many of you are running fairly big ones and not just something beneath the table at the office? Okay, good. So I have the perfect audience. If you feel like you are quite new to Jenkins, I will use sort of maybe some terminology that might flow over your head. Just ask directly so that you don't feel foolish. No questions are foolish. This is me. I'm Rober Sandell. You can find all my social over there. I'm a software engineer at Cloudbees. I work on one of our products that is called Cloudbees Jenkins Operations Center, which is a product that enables you to consolidate your masters. So if you have fairly big masters, you might want to split them up, and then you want to bring them together and have them share, being able to share like slaves, configuration, security setups, things like that. That is what Operations Center is. That is what I'm working on mostly when I do proprietary code. Otherwise, I do a lot of open source work as well in the community. And I've been contributor to the Jenkins community since June 2010 when I made my first plugin. And this is what I'm going to talk about in more particular. I will, yes, really, Jenkins 2.0. What it means, a short brief on what's coming next. And I will probably use the word we quite often in the presentation. Just so you know, I'm here from the community. So when I say we, I actually mean we, the Jenkins community. And hopefully, if I use we in the terms of Cloudbees, that will be sort of in correct context. But mostly I will use we as the Jenkins community. So why a 2.0? This is the question I asked myself the first time I heard about it in autumn last year. Jenkins community has always sort of prided themselves by always aiming at backwards compatibility. Like you can take a Jenkins home directory made by Jenkins version 1.3 or 4, or actually that's Hudson back then, but yeah, anyway, and start up in 1.6.54 or something, and it should work. And it has mostly worked. So sort of, and as well with plugins. I mean, a plugin written for Jenkins 1.2 or 3 or whatever should be able to run in the latest version of Jenkins. So bumping that major version has been a bit of a not really wanting to do that because that sort of means something. And we still want to stay backwards compatible. So that's why we are doing these types of talks and presentations to say that, yeah, that number 2 doesn't actually mean much. It's not that big of a deal if you're concerned of your IT operations and things like that, but it's a big deal in other ways. So why 2.0? The 1.x line is 11 years old now. That's quite old in terms of software, I guess. There is a lot of great stuff that has happened in the last couple of years. And even I that sort of are reading the users list and the dev lists daily have a hard time keeping up. I mean, most plugins are developed in silos with the people there, and they are sort of using that thing. And the discovery has been quite hard. And that's mostly a marketing thing. Because of these silos and we promoting things hasn't really been that easy. So all these new fancy things, when I talk to people outside of the standard sphere, haven't really heard about all these cool features. So a marketing thing first and foremost, the 2.0 brand. But there are a lot of cool stuff that are coming as well. And there are, as I said, hard to discover all the plugins. There are 1,100 plugins plus in the Update Center today. What do they do? Are they any good? Who knows? I had a Jenkins user conference talk 2013 where I had a section about, I tried to be funny about how to install a plugin. Well, first you read the source code and make sure that there are no big listeners that are doing any big loops and blah, blah, blah. And then you analyze that and this and that, and then you look at how is it maintained, is the maintainer fairly active and things like that. And then you install it and then you test it for 2 weeks and then you maybe feel safe. So the discovery there around these 1,100 plugins is quite hard. But that is also one of the strengths. I mean, 1,100 plugins, guys. That's quite cool, and it's a quite low barrier to enter as a contributor in terms of a plugin. It's basically you ask, and you'll get committer access to your plugin or some other plugin that has been abandoned, for example. So that has sort of fueled the Jenkins community quite good. But yeah, there are too many in some people's eyes, basically. There are, according to our anonymous user statistics, there are roughly 30,000 new Jenkins masters installed every year over year. So that is potentially 30,000 new Jenkins users every year. And installing Jenkins on Surface is quite easy. You download the WAR file or you apt-get install or whatever you do. You get that, you find the plugins you need, hopefully set up some security, and all the other 80 things that you probably forgot about, like tool installers and what have you. That should be easier. So we are sort of looking to helping all these new users that are coming to Jenkins to help out. Continuous delivery of all the things. I mean, there are 2 companies here at least that are enabling continuous delivery. And more software shops are moving in that direction. And people that have used Jenkins for a long time, they know that Jenkins can do continuous delivery, continuous deployment. But if you look at the old homepage, jenkins-ci.org, it says that it's an automation server. It even has continuous integration in the URL. I mean, So we need to sort of, or the idea is to help users get started with continuous delivery a lot easier as well. Oh yeah, as I said, the Jenkins.ci.org site, it's 6 years old. It has old tooling. It's to contribute content to that old page is, you need an account and you need to write a blog post and things like that. We have the wiki as well. It's sort of scattered all over the place. It's not easy to find the information you want. It's time for a change, and we have the Jenkins.io domain, so let's use that. So what's actually in this 2.0 release? 3 themes. The user experience, specifically the new user experience for new users, a new Jenkins website, and pipeline as code front and center. Those are the themes for the 2.0 release. User experience, we got ourselves a setup wizard that sort of aims to help you set up your Jenkins for the first time. If you're just upgrading, you get an upgrade wizard, but if you're starting from scratch, you get a setup. We have fixed the configuration pages to be a little bit less messy. We haven't I don't know if you've seen the talk that one of my colleagues had on the last Jenkins user conference, where he showed off a concept page on how the configuration might look like. We didn't go all the way that he envisioned, because that would break backwards compatibility. But we have done sort of some CSS tune-ups. We've added some tabs to make the configuration a lot sort of easier, or a bit more niceness in it. The security configuration is part of the setup wizard, so you can't. It's really hard actually to run a non-secure Jenkins now. And the default or defaultly included plugins is now sort of a curated list. We used to sort of have the bundled plugins. Now we have a list that the community is sort of curating. Out of those 1,100, we picked more than what used to be in there. So we now have Git, for example, the Git plugin that is probably most people installed correctly, but wasn't bundled by default.
Please tell me you can skip this across this wizard setup.
Yeah, you can skip the wizard if you want to. The wizard will only show up if it notices that it's a fresh Jenkins installation. So if you have Chef or Puppet that sets up your Jenkins master, the setup wizard won't particularly care about that. It will see it as a new or as an old installation.
If we do a configuration using Groovy scripts in a Docker containers, will that skip wizard? Or
it could. So this is actually one of the alpha releases, so it looks slightly different. You don't have the background, but this is the initial setup. You can sort of click to start with the recommended setup plugins. So that's a bit like what we bundled before, but the WAR file is actually smaller now because we don't bundle as much. But this will sort of go through what the community has said. This is a good starting base. And it will download and install them. Or you can customize your plugins. It looks a bit like this, where you can start off with a recommended list and click in and click off whatever plugins that you want, and the next page will be setting up security. Another one that is added after the alpha release is that you won't be able to get this one. There will be a printout in the log, and there will be a file in the home page, in the home directory containing a generated password that you need to fill in the first time you do. So you actually have, even before the wizard starts, you have a secure Jenkins. We have fixed up a bit the new item creation page. Fancy icons, which are actually quite good because you actually needed to read the name before when you selected a new item. Now you can just see the icon and click it quickly. We have categorized the item types as well, but it only shows up if you have more. So if there are items from 3 categories or more, that's when the categories show up. Otherwise, it's this. So the idea is that if you have something like the Cloudbees Jenkins platform that adds even more things there, you will have you will get the categories and easier to navigate that. Or if you just install even more open source plugins than I have here, you will get those categories. And this is sort of how the new configuration page. I mean, it's very similar. The DOM is still the same, so plugins should work. I say should because we have tested this version a lot more than any of the other LTS versions we have, but still might be plugins out there. But I mean, the DOM is still the same, so I haven't found any plugin that can't save correctly yet. So you see, it's a little bit darker background here, so you can can see that that step is where it should be. These sort of help you scroll to the correct sections. Yeah. I also did a terminology sweep. Some people had issues with the word slave, especially since we had the ability for you to create a dumb slave. So change that to agent now. At least on the surface, I mean, the code behind is still the same, but it's called agent now. Throughout, you used to have computers and nodes and slaves, and now you have agent. Some other changes that just been there for ages that we tuned up and made sure to be consistent in the UI. Yeah. There is a new user experience planned. That is the revamped plugin manager, for example, is something that didn't get into 2.0, but it might get into 2.10 or something. I don't know, 2.5. And that's with a better UI, with more information, the problems I described earlier, where you don't really know if it's good enough. And so will hopefully contain things like user ratings, and you can see the install count. And it's more like an app store experience is the idea. And we also have a whole new supplementary UI planned, because we couldn't really do the things we wanted with the default UI. We are doing now a whole separate experience that you can either run on a separate server or as a plugin straight into Jenkins. That is using all the new fancy things like RESTful things and whatever the kids nowadays like to play with. Called Blue Ocean. I will talk a little bit more about that afterwards. The website. So why is a website revamp part of a 2.0 release, really? Yeah, we could update that whenever, but as I mentioned in the beginning, the 2.0 is, a lot of it is the marketing release. It's targeted towards new users to give them a better experience. So that's sort of why. So the changes we're making here are sort of helping with onboarding, plugin discovery, not yet in place, but yeah, better documentation, giving you one-stop shop for examples and resources. So the old website was a Drupal site. It was dynamically generated with a lot of load on servers. It was hard to contribute to. You needed your account, you needed to, and then submit the blog post, and that was about the only thing you could change, unless you were part of the infra team. The new website is statically generated using Allstruct and ASCII doc. If you want to contribute to that page, you just make a pull request to the Jenkins.io page, and off you go. When it's merged, it's in the public. The documentation reference, we have pages that we call solution pages or use cases. That's the landing page for sort of one subject. Like if you are a Ruby developer or if you're a Ruby shop, there are sort of direct references to doing Ruby. There is one Docker thing, there's a Java, and yeah. Continuous delivery has one solution page. I'll show you that quite soon. So we got the Jenkins.io, and I will try to exit the presentation here. I don't know if this will work. No. Somehow I need to exit that. I think I'm going to need to sit down for this one. So this is the new Jenkins site. And you can download Jenkins directly, straight off here. Look at the downloads page, you can see that the latest weekly release is 2.01. It's there. It's not yet an LTS, of course. You can download that one as usual. You have changelog, past releases like normally. And here are the use cases page that I was talking about. So if you're doing Docker, you have presentations from past conferences, introduction, some articles that we find on the web, resources, blog posts, list of plugins that could help you. That's sort of the big new thing. Still some left to go. The documentation page, I think, is fairly good. I have a handbook, introduction to pipeline. But then, I mean, the wiki takes you to the old wiki and so on. Anything before I go back?
So I actually could make a new use case.
Yep. Just clone the repository, make a new page, make a pull request. There is a team. I think it consists of 2 people at the moment that will do a code review and give you comments, things. But yeah.
You have the different solutions there for different kind of use cases.
So Android, C, Docker, embedded. These are the sort of the ones that we came up with, basically.
Yeah. Is that also reflected in the installation? So if you say that I would like to set up a Python instance of Jenkins, I will get the right plugins from the start?
No. We were talking about that in the initial discussions around the setup wizard, but it ended up being a bit simpler way where you have the categories. So instead of sort of saying I would like, it's not the Eclipse thing. We did discuss the Eclipse thing, if that's what you're thinking. That you sort of you can download the PHP Jenkins development kit though. So, but it's easier to find these things now with categories. Like if you can select, you can go to the SCM category, and then you can sort of get the source code management you want, and you click on builders, and there you will find the builders you need. So that's sort of how we set it up. I can hopefully go back to the presentation. How did I end up there? It's one thing running Ubuntu combination like that. If we try to go back a bit. Yeah, so this is sort of what you get. You have organization and administration. That's sort of, I don't know, folders, and yeah, we have here markup formatters for security related things. In the build tools section, you have things like Ant, Maven, Gradle. I can't come up with any PHP thing at the moment. Source code management, distributed builds and containers. That's where you find your slave launchers and things like that. User management and security, your LDAP plugin, or Active Directory or PAM, user authentication are there. Notifications and publishing, that's, I mean, I'm a Java guy, so I can only come up with Java examples, but Java doc and, and those things are in there. Okay, we talked about the website. Pipeline as code. How many have heard of the workflow plugin? Cool. Did you notice that we renamed it? Oh, cool. So quite a few of you already knew that. But very few, if we look at it sort of globally, could find it and could understand what it was about, because it was called workflow, and that's not really, it's not in the continuous delivery handbook, basically. They talk about pipelines, so that's why we changed the name, so that it's easier to find. Yeah, what is it? It's a Groovy DSL. Basically where you can define your jobs as a script instead of the point and click thing that you used to do. And having it as a script means that you can put it in a source code management, and having it there means that it's code, so hence pipeline is code. Like we used to talk about configuration as code in the Puppet sense, for example.
How come you choose Python as code instead of Python as configuration?
Because it's as code.
Yeah, sure. Say compared to Travis, they have a configuration file.
Yeah.
From this, and instead you choose to do code.
Yeah, because it's Groovy, so you can code. So it's more than a DSL. It's more than, yeah, you can have your for loops and your if statements and things like that if you want to. Or you can make it simple. So yeah, you keep it in your Git repository or in your Subversion repository or whatever you have, Mercurial. And I will show you a better example later on, I think. Yeah. So there is a global library available in Jenkins where you can push library code. So if sort of your build master has some things that are common to do, you can push those there, and that will just be a function in all the other Jenkins files. There are,
Some parts of workflow used to be paid features.
Yeah, there are one.
Which is that?
The checkpoint feature.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
How does it work? You just set up Jenkins, install this, point it to GitHub repository.
Yeah, I will show you a demo later. Yeah. But the multi-branch support is semi-new. I mean, the multi-branch support is still in 1x, but that is basically you point it to your repository and it will scan through and create a separate job for each branch you have. Each branch that has a Jenkins file, that is. Yeah?
Will it remove the jobs when I remove the branch?
Yeah. And if you have a pull request, for example, it will create a separate job for that pull request, and when that pull request is merged, that job will disappear as well. There are things like durable task, which means that you can actually restart your master while your job is running out on the slave. So if you have a shell script running or a Maven thing running out on the slave, you can restart your master, and when the master comes back up, it will reconnect to the slave and check and continue the log from there. It's very easy to run things in parallel. That's just a description. Parallel, run this and this. And the input step is basically having the pipeline pause and wait for a user to say yes or no, and then it moves on again. You can check out multiple repositories if you want to. You can run on several nodes at the same time or at one. I mean, in the old days in freestyle, that is still available, by the way, you ran on one node and one node only. Now you can run on several nodes in sequence or in parallel and do whatever you like, almost. Yes, so let's take a look at, now we go back and have all this nonsense. This is the Jenkins file that builds Jenkins.io. We start by requesting a slave, or an agent as it's now called, with the label Docker. We enter a stage. This is mostly just a label that we call clean workspace. We clean that workspace, we run a shell script, enter the next stage. And that's where we check out SCM. So this source code management variable is there by default if it's sort of run from the Jenkins file. That contains all the connection details. You need to check out that repo on this node. We enter the build stage. This is the timeout that this will not take more than 60 minutes. Otherwise it will time out. This is one of those library functions, but it's actually declared in the same Jenkins file. We can actually look at that. So this is just a Groovy function, basically. It takes a couple of parameters. It installs the JDK on the slave. It sets up a couple of environment variables, add whatever the caller wanted to have. With env is a built-in step that sort of populates whatever is run inside that closure with that environment. It calls the body. That is also a parameter. If we go all the way up again, you see that the body here is running that shell script, running Gradle at this particular time with those environment variables, and with the JDK installed. Next stage, archive the site. So this is archive everything in the build directory, ends with .zip. Stash is almost the same, but this sort of makes it easier to stash something in one workspace and then later on unstash that. And that's the end of what we will do on that node. So now we enter somewhere else and we can choose whatever node we like. It doesn't really matter what node we are running on here. We check, are we on the master? Okay, then it's time to deploy. Set up SSH agent so that we have our credentials set up. Clean the directory, we unstash whatever we built before, we run a shell script, and this is the parallel part. So we are running on two different branches here, and we basically just SFTP to that to two different servers at the same time. So that's one example of what you can do. We can talk more about it if you have questions about how to do these stuff. We can do that afterwards. Yeah.
You're dividing one job in actually stages, and those stages could be in different nodes. But how do you take care of the workspace? It's not that easy to shuffle or send things back and forth to different agents.
Yeah, that's what the stash and the unstash steps were for. So stash basically takes a glob of files, compresses that, puts it on the master, and then you can unstash that later, and that's basically sending that zip file over to that slave.
Jenkins stash, not a Git stash.
Yeah. Or pipeline stash, or whatever you. Yeah.
Is there any pre-check that there will be enough space on the master for stashing if you have like a lot of jobs running at the same time?
Maybe. I haven't looked at the source code in a while. mean, if there isn't, you can send a bug report and someone will fix it. Or you can fix it yourself.
That's good.
But yeah, I think there are safeguards in place, but I'm not sure.
How about plugin cooperation? Can you use plugin in those
Do
you
you
use like some function in the plugins?
Yeah, definitely. And we are even planning on making that better. But at the moment, it's a step where you say which step you want to like. And plugins can implement their own steps as well. I have at least 2 plugins that implement new pipeline steps. So what I've been talking about so far has been is available in the 1.x version of Jenkins. That has been available for weeks, months, whatever. But there are actually some new things that are coming in 2.0, or has now come to 2.0. It used to be that if you had the Cloudbees Jenkins platform, you got this one if you paid for it, the stage view. We are now open sourcing that, and by we at that sentence I mean Cloudbees. So it's now open sourced, so that's available. It's actually part of the recommended set. So if you click the recommended, I'm quite sure you will get this one. So it has, these are your builds in order, and these are the stages. You can see if a particular stage failed, how long they took, on which slave they ran. These all ran on the master. You can get the artifacts downloaded directly from there, retry it. Yeah. And this is sort of shown on the main job page.
And those stages were that
Yeah,
marked
the
out
stage and the name. So here someone has written stage dev, stage QA.
Do you have any plans on improving that to facilitate parallel executions? Because right now, if you have a parallel execution, even nested parallel execution, it still will be one stage.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is called stage view for a reason. It only shows stages.
All right.
There is a guy, I saw a new plugin coming up. He used, yeah. I saw a guy making a contribution of a new plugin that actually shows you more on the step level,
Okay.
step abstraction, where you can see the forks. And yeah.
My company we did the delivery pipeline plugin, and it's quite good at showing these things. Hopefully, any day now we will have support.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So, stage view is open source. It's part of Jenkins 2.0, as you see. It used to be that for some reason, if you wanted GitHub pull requests, you had to pay for it, but you don't need to do that anymore. It's also open source. So this is basically, there are 2 levels of this. Either you can point Jenkins to your repository, and then it will scan your branches and see which one has the marker file, and it will create separate jobs for that. Or you can point Jenkins to your GitHub organization, and it will scan through all the repositories and all the branches. And with this now, you can also do pull requests. It used to be that you would be in the open source version of Jenkins, you could only do branches, but now we do pull requests as well. Yes, you can point it to any Git repository. It doesn't have to be GitHub. It could be your SSH or file // I will actually show a demo that is just using the file path. Okay, some polish. When Workflow plugin first came out, there were a bunch of plugins that wasn't really prepared to deal with this new paradigm. Most plugins were sort of expecting a job to be an abstract job, which is a specific class in Jenkins. And workflow and now pipeline, $5 in the swearing jar for saying workflow. Sort of, I mean, since it doesn't run on one node, it can run on many and things like that. So there were a lot of plugins that didn't really comply well. But we've done a lot of work on existing plugins to make sure that they are working smoothly. So most of the common ones, of the common plugins, are now compatible. I released build flow or build failure analyzer 2 days ago. 1.15 now has support for pipeline, for example. But there are plenty more. The Gary Trigger plugin also has support. It even has a separate, specific pipeline step for it. For the Groovy fanatics like myself, we have complained a lot about writing these Jenkins files because it didn't have support for standard for each loops or the .each type that you can use in Groovy because of the CPS engine. But that is fixed now, or it should be fixed. I haven't actually tested, but they're claiming that it works now. And this is sort of the simpler format. Today, if you have a plugin that has a step like, yeah, the Javadoc publisher or something like that, you have to write step in parentheses or in and then the name of the step and then the parameters. So that is planned to be made even simpler, so that it will actually look like they are completely integrated. But at the moment you still have to do things like that. But that is planned to be made better. Now we also have the auto-generated documentation. So you can, on your Jenkins instance, you can get a nice documentation of all the steps that are available. There is now GDSL support, so you can get code completion in your IDE if you prefer to code in that. Eclipse DSLD support is not working yet, I think, but it's going to be fixed. And so within Jenkins help links, you can now reach the documentation. We will put that up on the homepage as well, whenever that happens. I don't know. Yeah, so this is the reference documentation. So you can get the steps listed. That's the archive step. You can see the parameters. So this is just generated from the help documentation of whatever plugin that implements that step. So this is things that are in the works that is not in 2.0. There is in the experimental update center, there's a pipeline editor plugin where you can back to point and clicking again if you want to build your pipelines in a point and click scratch kind of interface. There are various projects going on left and forth that is trying to write a bit more opinionated DSL versions. Like there is a Travis.yaml parser that can just convert or read the Travis file and run that in Jenkins straight off. What more do we have? There is plan for a converter tool, so you can take a freestyle job, convert that straight off. Matrix projects, the multi-configuration project, we still don't have full support for that. I mean, you can run things in parallel, but you don't get this nice matrix presentation. So that is also in the works for coming.
Question about the converter.
Yeah.
Does that mean if you have freestyle jobs that are linked back to back, they will be converted to nice pipelines?
Hopefully. I think that's the idea, because otherwise, why would you want to convert the freestyle job? Yeah. Okay, so beyond 2.0, when this sort of call to arms of making a 2.0 came up, all these old grudges started to be discussed that we usually have been talking about for ages on the dev list. These that are sort of much bigger and much more involved things than what we're covering in 2.0 today. And even some things that we planned for 2.0 didn't actually fit. So we would like to, we have other things that are coming. If that becomes Jenkins version 3 or if it just becomes a 2.25, we don't know. But we have some plans. So, oh my God. Yeah. So this is the concept art for the plugin manager, the more of an app store kind of thing that we're thinking about. This is just a concept, as I said, but this could potentially be both on Jenkins.io as well as inside Jenkins to make it easy for you to select whatever it is that you're looking for and give you a bit more information, and so you can make educated guesses about what to install and not just selecting from a list.
Sorry, is it possible to keep track on your configuration so you can populate a new or a new instance of your Jenkins server with the same configuration with the old version of that plugin you really needed because the new one wasn't working? So or is it just you grab the new ones and hope?
Yeah, I don't know how they are planning to make that work, but I mean, in the back end, it will most likely work similar to what there is. There will just be more information for the client to consume. So that will still mean grabbing the latest one.
If you deploy in Docker containers, the default Docker container for Jenkins has support for plugins.txt, and then you can specify all plugins with versions you want.
Yeah.
And that way you can preserve the version of plugins.
Yeah, I mean, all the plugins are in the Maven repository, so mvn dependency : download. I mean, if you have those kinds of things, you would probably use something like Docker or Chef to make that, is my guess. Or you use the enterprise features. That can solve that for you as well. And we have a brand new UI planned as well. As I said, we couldn't really make the old UI brand new because that would break a lot of things. We are planning a completely, not completely, but very separate new UI that we call Blue Ocean that will keep an eye out for the virtual jams, or what we used to call office hours. There will be presentations coming up there in the coming days, weeks. I don't know what they're planning. So it's like I said, it's a separate app or a plugin with a separate UI that's running client side, that has this RESTful APIs, all those fancy things that kids want to use today, etc., etc. And it's pipeline centric, which means that it's not really looking at folders and jobs and things like that. It's more centralized around your pipeline and diagnosing your pipelines and seeing your applications and your environments and things like that. So I can't really say much more about it because at the moment it's sort of a work in progress and we don't really know where it's going, but it will be starting to come.
But the idea is to replace all the functionality of the original UI?
Yeah. Okay. But not everything at once. So, I mean, for a while, you will probably at times need to go back into the old UI to do something. You can't do it all at once. This is one that I've been dreaming about since 2011, I think. Today you have the configurations, the build records, the logs, the fingerprints, the build artifacts are all stored on the master. And we want to reduce that local storage dependency somehow. But it's quite a lot of the open APIs in core that are sort of referencing these XML files straight off. So that's not going to be easy, but the plan is to have a pluggability in the storage, sort of a BioODB, bring your own data backend type of thing. And by doing so, Jenkins will be a lot more cloud friendly than it is today. I mean, install the S3 plugin, and all of a sudden you can store your artifacts in S3 buckets, or keep your jobs configurations in a MongoDB or something like that. There have been things done in the past. The .ci plugin, it's a very opinionated plugin because it just assumes that you're using GitHub and that you're using MongoDB and some other things, but that was sort of the proof of concept that made us realize that we might be able to do this. But that is coming later, a lot later. Woo, am I done? Cool. Thank you. So, any questions in general? Yep.
Show us